In this lesson, we continue with secondary corrections. In the previous lesson, we discussed windows, and so far we've been color correcting only still images, where neither objects nor the camera moved, of course. Practically speaking, however, we often need to move our windows in time, that is, animate them, so that our correction moves identically with our object or at times with the camera. Say we'd like to color correct this door. Therefore, we'll need a window, and our best option is probably the power curve. Let's create a mask. However, the mask works only with the first frame of the clip. We need to move or animate it during the clip. First, let's try it manually. I'll activate the automatic keyframe creation for the second node. After a few keyframes, we see that this won't work since the door movement is not linear. Plus, it contains a slight rotation we'd also have to take into consideration. I'll therefore erase the animation. DaVinci Resolve offers a much more elegant way of animating masks using the tracker panel. In the Analyze panel, we'll leave each mask movement checked, since we cannot exactly say how the camera moved. Since we are on the first frame of the clip, click on the forward tracking button. The mask starts to track the door movement. Tracking attempts to keep the power curve shape. Let's lighten the door by increasing gamma and gain. And add softness for power curve. The result looks fine, even though our tracking was not 100% precise. Tracking indicators appear in several spots, notifying us that we've used image tracking. In the storyboard, under the node, as well as at the power curve icon. The DaVinci tracker is not as highly accurate as some other types of tracking software, specifically designed for image tracking. Therefore, in case we need a precise, complex mask, we can import it from an external file. Yet, the DaVinci tracker has several other interesting functions. The first is an offset of the tracked area. Let's say we wish to track a particular spot in the picture that is really difficult to track. Or we'd like to track an object that exits the screen. For example, this window. Since we are on the last frame, I select backward tracking. After some time, the tracker pauses, yet we'd like to keep tracking a portion of the window. For cases like this, we are able to offset power curve to another object in the shot. It should be located at the same height as our target object. It's also important to have the clip button enabled. I'll move the power curve lower. And restart tracking. This time, the tracker continued all the way, that is, to the beginning of the clip. Now I can move the power curve back to the target spot. The manual input of keyframes is yet another useful tool. In this clip, we'd like to use power curve to color correct the church window. As we see, the view is interrupted by a tree, which, for a time, covers the entire window. Obviously, tracking will not work. We will need to manually animate the image section where the church window is not visible. I'll switch to the last correct frame of the clip, that is, to the frame for which the tracker provided last correct data. In order to work more easily, I somehow need to erase all that is incorrect following this location. Unfortunately, there is no option in the menu for erasing only parts of the tracking data. I'll have to cheat the tracker a bit. The clip button is still enabled. I'll do a big offset, which means that I'll move the power curve out of the image. Now I start the tracker and it generates blank data. I'll need to restart it a couple of times, since if the tracker has nothing to track, it stops after a moment. This way we have managed to erase all data following the last correct location. So I move to the frame and return the power curve to its original location and check tracking. It's crucially important to activate the frame button at this point. Using the mark button, I create a keyframe. Move forward in the clip by a couple of frames. Now move the power curve to the correct position. I press keyframe again. I will enlarge the graph screen so that you can see better what I am doing. Next, I press Between. An animation is created between the two mark indicators or keyframes. I repeat the process. Move a couple of frames forward. Replace power curve. Press mark and then between. Now the entire power curve is located behind the tree, so I move to the other side of the tree trunk. If needed, the power curve can also be rotated. From this point on, the tracker should be working again. Sometimes it is unnecessary to create that many manual points. If the object's movement is linear, sometimes 2 manual keyframes suffice. The tracking principle can also be used for image stabilization. Let's try to stabilize this plaque on the wall. Switch to the stabilizer window and start tracking. Then click on Stabilize. The board is now 100% stabilized. As we can see, its movement is almost all gone. For a more realistic stabilization, changing the strong parameter to 80 and smooth to 50 might suffice. Let's confirm again by clicking Stabilize. The image now moves more naturally as we have removed large picture fluctuations. In any program, as a result of stabilization, blank spaces are always created, and these need to be erased. Let's activate Zoom. If the issue with the black area isn't completely resolved, we can in turn go to the sizing window and increase the image zoom manually. Let's return to nodes for a moment. In this shot, we'd like to darken the roof window. We create a linear window, lower gain, and gamma. In the next node, we want to make everything else brighter. We can use an inverted copy of the linear window. To create it, simply connect these two blue indicators. The advantage of such a connection is that whenever the linear window or any other window in fact changes, the inverted window in the next node automatically changes as well. Thus far in this basic tutorial, we have used serial nodes only. DaVinci Resolve also offers other node types, which enable us to make more complex corrections. Let me briefly introduce these other node types to you. Imagine a situation where, using the second serial node, we would completely desaturate the image, and then wanted to change the blue shade into a red one. We are unable to select blue color in the third serial node, since the picture is already black and white. If we use layer node, however, we're able to isolate or even change the shirt color using the qualifier. As we can see from the graph, in this layer node, the qualifier takes its source data not from the second, black and white node, but from the first one. In turn, a parallel node enables us to mix two different corrections. For example, let's desaturate the image in the first node, and then, in the second one, add significantly blue color for gamma. The resulting correction is created by mixing these two color adjustments. In this lesson, we have introduced the tracker as a useful tool for tracking windows. We also discussed image stabilization tools, and at the end, I briefly mentioned additional methods of organizing the node system in DaVinci Resolve.